microphone របស់ឯកឧត្តមលោកស្រីអស់លោកនឹងត្រូវបាន mute បិទដើម្បីកុំឲ្យរំខានដល់ការអង្គសិក្ខាសាលារបស់យើងដូចគ្នាដែរវីដេអូត្រូវបានបិទដើម្បីកុំឲ្យមានការរំខានក្នុងករណីដែលលោកស្រីមានជាសំណួរឬក៏ជាបញ្ហាផ្សេងអាចនឹងលើកឡើងសំណួរនៅក្នុង Q&A ប៊ូតុង Q&A បាទគឺនៅខាងលើនេះប៊ូតុង Q&A ហើយអាចនឹងវាយសំណួរឬក៏ព័ត៌មានផ្សេងដែលលោកស្រីអស់លោកចង់លើកឡើងក្នុងករណីលោកស្រីអស់លោកចង់មានជាសំណួរជាពិសេសសម្រាប់លោកស្រីអស់លោកជាវាគ្មិនបាទសូមចុច raise hand នៅក្នុងករណីនេះដើម្បីឲ្យ moderator អាចដឹងថាលោកស្រីអស់លោកនឹងត្រូវឆ្លើយសំណួរណាមួយបាទ slide ដែលនឹងត្រូវធ្វើបទបង្ហាញនឹងត្រូវបានផ្ញើជូនអាយដាមលោកស្រីអស់លោកនៅក្រោយពេលសិក្ខាសាលានេះអញ្ចឹងទេនេះជាព័ត៌មានដែលសម្រួលដល់ការបកប្រែនិងការចូលរួមរបស់លោកស្រីអស់លោកសូមអរគុណបាទ អរុនសួស្តីអាយដាមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីខ្ញុំសូមអនុញ្ញាតដើម្បីជម្រាបជូនសារឡើងវិញអំពីវិធានមួយចំនួនដែលពាក់ព័ន្ធទៅនឹងការសេវាបកប្រែនៅក្នុងអង្គសិក្ខាសាលាអនឡាញរបស់យើងនៅក្នុងថ្ងៃនេះបាទខ្ញុំចង់បញ្ជាក់ដែរថាសិក្ខាសាលានេះគឺនឹងធ្វើជាភាសាខ្មែរនិងភាសាអង់គ្លេសហើយប្រក្នុងករណីដែលលោកស្រីអស់លោកស្ដាប់ទាំងពីរភាសាសូមមេត្តាចុច off នៅលើ interpretation option នៅពេលហ្នឹងគឺលោកស្រីអស់លោកអាចស្ដាប់ទាំងភាសាខ្មែរទាំងភាសាអង់គ្លេសបានក្នុងករណីដែលលោកស្រីអស់លោកស្ដាប់តែភាសាអង់គ្លេសសូមអនុញ្ញាតអញ្ជើញដើម្បី ចុចភាសាអង់គ្លេសនៅពេលនោះគឺលោកស្រីអស់លោកអាចស្ដាប់តែភាសាអង់គ្លេសបានទេដូចគ្នាដែរចំពោះលោកស្រីអស់លោកដែលស្ដាប់តែភាសាខ្មែរគឺសូមមេត្តាចុចលើភាសាខ្មែរ option នេះបាទក្នុងពេលជាមួយនេះដែរគឺ microphone ហើយនឹង camera ត្រូវបានបិទដើម្បីធ្វើយ៉ាងម៉េចឲ្យដំណើរការនៃអង្គសិក្ខាសាលារបស់យើងហ្នឹងគឺចាប់អាចអនុវត្តទៅបានដោយរលូនក្នុងករណីដែលលោកស្រីអស់លោកមាន Q&A គឺអាចនឹងសរសេរសំណួរដើម្បីឲ្យវាគ្មិនរបស់យើងអាចនឹងផ្ដល់នៅចម្លើយឲ្យសូមបញ្ជាក់ពីស្ថាប័ននិងឈ្មោះលោកស្រីអស់លោកប្រសិនបើអាចក្នុងករណីសម្រាប់វាគ្មិនក្នុងករណីលោកស្រីអស់លោកអាចនឹងចង់លើកឡើងនៅជាចម្លើយផ្សេងគឺសូមលើកដៃហើយបទបង្ហាញដែលនឹងត្រូវធ្វើនឹងចែកជូនលោកស្រីអស់លោកនៅពេលសិក្ខាសាលាបានបញ្ចប់សូមអរគុណបាទ
So maybe we can start now, right?
Yes, please go ahead, Brajesh.
Okay, Sonia, thanks. Good morning and welcome to all to this webinar. His Excellency Dr. Pan Pala, Secretary of State, Ministry of Economy and Finance, ADB Country Director to Cambodia, Sonia Durrani Jamal, Excellencies, ADB Director for Human and Social Development Division in Southeast Asia, Ayako Inagaki, distinguished panelists from the government and industry members of the press, and ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank, I extend a very warm welcome to this webinar to discuss the findings of the ADB study on the implications of the fourth industrial revolution, or more popularly known as 4IR, on Cambodia. We'll be sharing the key findings from the Cambodia country report. To give a brief background on the study, as you would all agree, labor markets have been undergoing great transformations due to the onset of disruptive technologies. There have been enormous fears on the potential loss of jobs to automation and artificial intelligence. We undertook a study of 4 countries in the ASEAN region, Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, to understand the impact of 4IR technologies on jobs, skills, and tasks. ADB has an important portfolio of planned investments in education and training. As we collaborate with our key counterparts in our partner countries in designing and programming our support to education and skills development, we need to ensure that we are doing this with a futuristic lens and preparing the ground for the youth of today to access the jobs of tomorrow. As labor markets get increasingly unpredictable and, oh, I see, there's a problem. I'm just trying to check. Sorry about this. Okay, great. So our key stakeholders in all the 4 countries have prioritized the topic of impact of 4IR in different ways, but with the common objective of ensuring that appropriate actions are taken to tap the benefits and in mitigating potential negative effects. We have a strong consensus that preparing the future workforce requires us to address the implications of 4IR in a systematic and consistent way and through a whole of government approach. The issue of 4IR has been discussed extensively, and several studies had forecast loss of millions of jobs due to automation and raised many apprehensions about the impact of 4IR. However, our study results are more tempered. The study results across all 4 countries found that while there will indeed be loss of jobs due to automation, there will also be new jobs that will be created due to the impact of productivity increases and increase in incomes. This was found in all the 8 sectors studied across the 4 countries. each of the sectors covering manufacturing, industry, services, etc. However, the study stresses that to access these new jobs, it is crucial to invest in adequate skills development in a timely way. The study is based on insights and information through surveys of employers, as well as training institutions in the countries concerned. Hence, the reports bring interesting and timely inputs to the development of strategies and roadmaps to facilitate the transition to 4IR technologies. The study reports focus on the importance of skills for future jobs in an increasingly automated workplace. The study results provide a range of insights, and we hope the main ones will be covered in this webinar. I'd like to encourage you to access the report online for a complete description of the findings. The other 3 country reports, as well as a synthesis report, are available for those interested to read them. We think this is an area of great importance in preparing for future labor markets that will become increasingly digital. We are also undertaking a similar study in ADB's Central West region covering Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Uzbekistan. The onset of COVID-19 has accelerated digitalization and online practices. We believe that a certain minimum degree of digital skills will be crucial for all members of the workforce, together with a certain section requiring intermediate and advanced skills. The extensive job losses that have occurred due to COVID pose worries to policymakers. We believe that reskilling and upskilling with focus on digital occupations will help with faster labor market recovery and smoother transition to a digital economy. At ADB, we'll be continuing our work on this stream to address digital transformation and digital skills. We'll pursue further investments in STEM education at all levels of education and support to skills and entrepreneurship in occupations requiring higher order skills, including digital skills. We also need to support the upgradation of training institutions with a focus on 4IR technologies to deliver education and training more effectively. We need to pursue new courses and curriculum to serve economies making the transition to 4IR. I hope our study reports are timely in further expanding dialogue in this area. This webinar is very timely, and we are particularly thankful to all the government and private sector stakeholders for joining us today in this event. I would now like to invite Sunia Duani Jamal, ADB's country director to Cambodia, to deliver our opening remarks. Sunia has been encouraging ADB and the study team to work on this area, and we're grateful for our support to this study. Sunia, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Brajesh. His Excellency Dr. Pan Pala, Secretary of State, Ministry of Economy and Finance, Excellencies and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. On behalf of the Asian Development Bank in Cambodia, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this morning to a webinar on disseminating the study findings on reaping the benefits of Industry 4.0 through skill development in high growth industries in Southeast Asia. The study, as Brajesh has explained, explores the implications of the fourth industrial revolution on current and future job markets. I'm very pleased to see a very extensive participation by senior policymakers from key line ministries, as well as representatives from industries and business associations, including the Garment Manufacturers Association in Cambodia, GMAC, tourism agencies, research institutes, education and technical and vocational training institutes, development partners, and civil society organizations, and in addition, media and individual consultants who have joined us today for this webinar. So thank you all for taking time. This study, which commenced in July 2019, is a result of a collective effort by the ADB and a team of consultants. We hired the Alpha Beta team, as well as all key government agencies, industries, and business associations who have worked tirelessly to produce the findings that we will share with you today. As you know, Cambodia has made substantial gains over the last few decades. However, as the global COVID-19 pandemic unfolds and new strains are discovered, I think this is having unprecedented impact and causing quite a lot of challenges for policymakers. Supply chains are changing, labor skills are changing, value chains are changing, and I think this is going to be especially challenging for policymakers to address. So while the study covers findings on and emerging opportunities to the garments and tourism industries, I think a common theme which will emerge is from our discussions is likely going to be the need for greater agility to better prepare the skills of the workforce to all emerging and changing opportunities. Dr. Fraser Thompson from Alpha Beta will share key findings from the study. And we have panelists from key ministries and GMAC who will then share their reflections, as well as their institutional perspectives. I think I would be particularly very grateful if the panelists could focus on what the current uncertain economic conditions, what kinds of pressures they are seeing in their industries, and how this may impact skills development and skills training approaches. A robust skills development roadmap, which incorporates the future of these industry transformation, is also needed to enhance Cambodia's industrial development policy and digital economy aspirations. As you know, that the government has recently developed a new investment law, drafted a law, and has also undertaken a review of the industrial development policies. ADB has also commenced our technical assistance to support the government to develop its long-term skills development roadmap, and undertake industrial transformation maps for the textile and apparel industry. So with all these key policy documents in place, we look forward to the government advice during the webinar today. Excellencies and distinguished participants, ADB, as you know, has had a long commitment towards skill development and education in Cambodia. We are a long-lasting partner and one of the lead development partners in this sector, where we have supported projects since 1996. We are very much looking forward to finding ways in engaging the private sector in skills transformation. Currently, we have 4 projects which are focusing on strengthening human capital and lifelong learning. These include the Upper Secondary Education Development Program under the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport, TVET Sector Development Program, Skills for Competitiveness Program, which is under the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training. We do have follow-on programs for skills development in our pipeline. So this webinar will provide very good input into the design of our upcoming programs. Currently, we're in the midst of our country programming mission, where the ADB and the government will discuss not only the investment pipeline, but also knowledge products, such as the study that you are about to share and discuss. Today's webinar provides a very timely and great opportunity for all of us to discuss how we can support the future economic growth as well as human productivity in Cambodia. I wish you all every success and enjoyable deliberations. Stay safe and thank you. Brajesh, over to you.
So now we'd like to move on to the presentation from Fraser. Fraser, why don't you go ahead and present the key findings from the study? Please go ahead.
Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the chance to present. Just checking, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Fraser, I think I sort of missed something. So for now, we'd like to request His Excellency Pan Pala to share his remarks. Sorry about that. His Excellency, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Brajesh. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
All right. Good morning, Madam Sanya Durrani Jamal, ADB Country Director to Cambodia. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you all. It's my really great pleasure to attend, this study webinar to look at the findings of the study, what we call the reaping the benefits of Industry 4.0 through skill development. I know it's in Southeast Asia, but I think today we only discuss Cambodia particularly. So let me begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to the Asian Development Bank for organizing this study, as well as the webinar. And I also would like to highly commend the Alpha Beta team, for such a good report. I still remember, I think Sanya mentioned about July 2019, but I remember that we went for the launching in October 2019. And from then, I think just a year time, when the report finished, and now we can get this wonderful report, short but sweet. It's good. It's very good report. The IR4 is, I think we all know that is here, and I think we all know that even, this IR4 will be even more prominent in the future related to every aspect of our lives. We all know that IR4 will have huge impacts. That's why, for this study, we have chosen the two important sectors, government and tourism, because these two sectors have provided a lot of jobs for our young men and women. It's important to know in advance the pros and cons of this new transformation so that we can formulate policy to deal and mitigate the impacts, as well as reaping maximum benefits from this transformation. I think for us, all of us, we understand that, whether IR1, IR2, IR3, or IR4, I think the most important determinant to the successful future is human resource. Once you have a good and capable human resource, we can achieve anything. Therefore, I would like to emphasize again and again that upgrading the skill of labor is very crucial for Cambodia economic diversification, particularly in reaping the benefit from IR 4.0 revolution and mitigating the negative impacts on jobs. From this study, we can see that there are plus and minus from the study, but once again, the report mentioned that the IR4 will be likely to create a net job about 40% by 2030 in the government sector, and job loss is only 3% in the tourism sector. I do agree that IR4 may be less impacts on job in tourism sector since the automation are unable to replace human being in the sector. There are about 9 million jobs in Cambodia, employing 80% of adult population, and 160,000 new workers enter the workforce every year. Though more than 95% of total employment are lower and medium-skilled workers. Rapid digital transformation will increase demand for knowledge-intensive jobs, such as digital skills, soft skills, critical thinking, while management skills demand is likely to decline. In parallel, the progress of IR4, Cambodia has been undergoing economic diversification process. I think right now we have witnessed that while garment industry is still a big industry in Cambodia, a major export products, but at the same time we have seen the diversification into other industry, electronics, into assembly, and in the last 4 or 5 years we have seen this diversification, quite good diversification for Cambodian economy. At the same time, I think over the last 5 years, the government has also initiated many policy. For example, I think, and with the help of ADB, definitely, for example, the National Tibet Policy, National Employment Policy, DP Skill Development Project, and mechanism aiming at to promote skill development and reduce skill mismatch. So while a lot of progress have been achieved, a lot more needs to be done, not just to coping with the increase in demand in the emerging sector, but also to prepare for the IR4 revolution. Facing with this challenging skill demand, so how can we create an inclusive, equitable, and sustainable labor markets? I think effective implementation of government policy, to respond to these challenges is a necessity to reduce the risk of widening skill gaps and unequal opportunity. So I would like to share some of my thoughts, as follows on this issue. First, definitely, for us, I think we have to focus on, the soft infrastructure. In this, TVET should provide a flexible market response training program and opportunity for all people at different lifespan. TVETs need to increase, upgrade education system and existing curriculum, provide standard and accredited education and apprenticeship, improve the quality of training program and foundation education. This is the soft part, but I think also we have to strengthen the hard part, the hard infrastructure, such as building labs and study materials. ADB, of course, has helped a lot. And I think recently the government has also invested quite considerable amount of budget into this hard infrastructure. So I think within the next 1 or 2 years, the issue of hard infrastructure will not be a problem anymore. So what we need to do is that, we have to strengthen all those soft infrastructure. And of course, skill is workforce is scarce and harder, and going into the future. So I think employers need to find the right talent if they want to have their enterprise to stay relevant in the future. Hence, employers should have a long-term plans also. I think this is for the private sector that they should invest heavily in human resource. And with this, we understand that as I said, that moving forward without good human resource, we cannot do anything. So with this understanding, our new law, as mentioned by Madam Sanya, is that in our revised investment law, we have incorporated the incentive for skill development into this new investment law, revised investment law. And also, I think, taking into consideration that technology is important, so we will also provide incentive for employer, for corporation, for firms that want to upgrade their technology in the future. These are the two important areas that the revised investment law will cover. The last one, I think I want to say, for this is like private sector should get involved quite a lot in this new transformation. We have seen more engagement from the private sector, into our TVET institution, but I think more needs to be done. We have a skill development program that we have implemented in the last 2-3 years, but it's not that kicking off yet. It's still a pilot. But once again, I want to reemphasize that for this skill development, for now it's just a pilot project. But if there is a more need, if the program runs well, so there will be more budget from the government. So the thing is that there must be a cooperation between the private sector and also with TVET government, and also from development partners like ADB. These are just some of my thoughts. So with this good report, where do we go from here? So I think when I read the report, I do encourage the Alpha Beta team to go further, and I think you aim to do what we call the industrial transformation map, and for this government and tourism. But at the same time, I think our focus in the next 5 to 10 years that we also want to attract 2 more sectors. The first one is automotive, and the second one is the electronics. We have done this study with another DP, the British Embassy, but I think the industrial transformation map, is something that maybe to next step from the study that we have done with the British Embassy, the Boston Consulting Globe, that they are doing this support for us in cooperation with the Council for the Development of Cambodia. And I look forward to this industry transformation map. And finally, I look forward to today's fruitful discussion and hope that this is just the initial step, toward further cooperation among all stakeholders for many years to come. All my best wishes to today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Indeed, it's a pleasure to have you here today. you are a very well-known figure with rich experience, currently Secretary of State, Ministry of Economy and Finance, but also your rich experience in financial management, information system, public financial management reform program, formulation of national and sectoral strategic plans, revenue mobilization strategy, ASEAN's affairs and economic development policy, and post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy. We really appreciate your rich insights on how seriously the government is taking this transition forward, and also highlighting some of the priority sectors where you are doing further research. But I think your emphasis on soft sector is precisely what will provide extra mileage in maximizing the investment in the infrastructure, hard infrastructure. And this is hopefully the message that will come out in our discussion also later on. So thank you very much for your insights. Now, I'd like to invite Fraser Thompson and Genevieve Lim to present the salient features of the study findings. Fraser was the team leader for this study and is the founding director of Alpha Beta. ADB is delighted to partner with Alpha Beta for this study in ASEAN and a follow-up study in the Central West region. Fraser and Jen have visited the countries covered in the study and undertaken various consultations. So to you, Fraser and Jen.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you very much, Brajesh, and thank you, His Excellency Panpala, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. What we're going to share here, my colleague and I, Genevieve, this is, as we said, like a year-long piece of work, but we're going to condense this into 20 minutes to just give you a flavour of some of the main insights for the discussion that follows. And there's a link, I believe, that's been sent to the main report to everyone here. So to kick things off, I think a good starting point is, what do we mean by Industry 4.0? And I guess to start with, it's understanding, well, what were the other industrial revolutions before that? So first of all, the first industrial revolution in the 18th century was really around mechanization of industry and using water and steam powered machines. Then we had the second industrial revolution, which was really about assembly line production enabled by electricity. And we think about, the Ford factories as one example of that. The third industrial revolution then focused on computers, the internet, robotics, and automation and electronics. And that was really began in the 1980s. And now the fourth industrial revolution is actually something quite different. First of all, it started off by just thinking narrowly in terms of technologies for manufacturing. But now it's more understood to be a fusing of different technologies cutting across Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and cognitive computing, all coming together to transform the way we produce and we interact. So if you look at it, Industry 4.0 is, unlike some of these previous industrial revolutions, it's a emergence and incorporation of a range of different technologies coming together. Now, why did we do this work? The reason was that there was a number of gaps that we saw in really understanding what Industry 4.0 means for skills, both development and supply. On the demand side, we saw that actually there's a limited attention to date of what are the new jobs that are going to be created. So we tended to focus just on the jobs lost, not on the jobs created. There was also a limited understanding of some of the new skills that would be demanded. When it comes to skill supply, there's been a lack of analysis of how the training requirement channels will vary. So which types of training is going to be most crucial to deliver those required skills. And then when it comes to policy interventions, most previous studies have not really mapped out exactly what are the full set of interventions that are going to be needed, but also really focusing on implementation. And our research showed us the implementation that is one of the toughest aspects. So these are really the kind of areas that this study looked to address. And beyond Cambodia, we also looked at Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So first of all, what was the potential impact of Industry 4.0 on jobs and skills? We started off and we selected two sectors, garments and tourism. And the reason we selected them was for a number of reasons. One, that they're very important for government policy. Second is that they rate very highly in terms of importance to employment, growth, and relevance of Industry 4.0. And they're also representative of manufacturing and service sectors. So it gave us a variety of different understanding of Industry 4.0 impacts. And when looking at these two sectors, we used a range of data. So we did a large-scale employer survey. We also did scraping of online job boards, as well as a series of interviews and workshop discussions in Cambodia to really understand some of the trends and applications of what was happening. So what did we find, first of all? Well, interestingly, that Industry 4.0 currently has limited understanding amongst many firms in these sectors in Cambodia today. So we saw, for example, in garments, less than a third of employers said they had a good understanding of Industry 4.0. And when it came to tourism, it was about 35%. So there is a real gap. And obviously, this study was done before COVID-19, but COVID-19 in some ways have actually increased the importance of these kind of digital adoptions in Industry 4.0, particularly in sectors as badly hit as tourism, for example. The second was that even though the overall job impact numbers may not be as bad as first feared, so our study shows that we're not expecting massive unemployment here. In fact, that there could be a net positive effect. But if you scrape below the surface, there could be some significant impacts. One of which is that women are likely to be 5 times more affected than men in terms of automation risk. And that's just because of the types of jobs that are held by women in many of these sectors tend to be more automatable than some of the male counterparts. So there is a real, if you like, a gender inequality potential issue that needs to be solved here. When we look at the kind of tasks that are going to be done, there's going to have to be a massive shift from routine physical tasks to more analytical, interpersonal, and non-routine physical tasks. So if you like, one of our research findings was that even though there may not be a massive impact in terms of job losses, the jobs that will be there in 5 years' time are going to look very different in terms of the type of tasks that workers are going to be doing. So there's going to be a really massive need to think about the training that goes with that. And if we look at the skills that are going to be needed, there's a few that will be particularly important. And those are around evaluation and critical thinking skills. In the tourism sector, we're going to see more communication and social skills gaining particular importance. Now, if you look at the job impacts, I shared a bit of that before, but you see here that the jobs lost, it could be up to 12% of jobs lost in garments and only about 3% in tourism, so still significant. And as I said, many of those jobs will be heavily weighted towards females. But there is actually potentially even more jobs to be gained. And this doesn't get talked about a lot, but actually by driving faster growth and faster productivity, there's the potential to grow these sectors much quicker and then add different types of employment as a result. So net, there may actually be a net positive job impact from Industry 4.0. So our research sort of suggests that it's not all doom and gloom in terms of employment. And in fact, we may have to see a positive impact on productivity and a positive impact on job creation. But it will require really different types of skills. And if you look at those types of skills, you see here the top 10 skills. The ones in green are the ones that are becoming more important. And so you see the evaluation, judgment, and decision-making becomes really important in garments. And that's because they're going to be uses of things like industry robotics, IoT, etc. And we're going to require people with skills to understand how to utilize these technologies and bring them together. In the tourism industry, it's a bit different. because some of the back end could be automated, there's going to be a lot more focus on things like written and verbal communication. So the softer side is going to become particularly important in that sector. Now that's the job demand side. What's happening with training institutes? Well, what's interesting is that when we did this large-scale survey of training institutes in Cambodia, we saw that almost 2/3 of them said that they need to get additional support to help them prepare for Industry 4.0. And that the uptake of Industry 4.0 in the classroom in terms of technology is still quite limited. Secondly, and this is concerning, is that curriculums are not being updated quickly enough to keep pace with the emerging technologies. Cambodia is not alone here. Many countries we saw in the region have similar concerns, but there is that real emphasis to continue to update curriculums so they're reflective of the changing technologies. Third, even though there's regular communication between training institutions and employers, it doesn't seem that that is particularly as deep as it could be. So limited staff and training institutions are actually doing on-the-job placements. And so there seems to be a bit of a gap between training institutions and these employers in these sectors. A big issue is around quality assurance of programs that a training institution said is going to be really crucial from a government intervention standpoint. And then finally, there is a gap between how confident training institutions are with the quality of the people that they're producing versus the views of employers. And I just want to share that one slide because it is quite sort of a stark difference. We asked training institutions on the left-hand side, how confident are you about the quality of the graduates that you're producing, that they're prepared for entry-level positions, that they have the right kind of general skills, and that they have the right kind of job-specific skills? And you see here that training institutions are pretty confident. So over half and up to 78% believe that they're producing graduates with the right mix of skills. But then we asked government and tourism employers the same question. And you see here a really big drop. So government employers, only about 10% of employers agree that they're getting the right quality of young Cambodians that are entering into the system for what they need. Tourism is a little bit higher, but still much, much lower than what training institutions say. So if you like, there's a gap between what training institutions are providing and what employers are looking for in Industry 4.0. And I think that's partly reflected by curriculums not being updated quickly enough, but also the lack of on-the-job training of some of these training institutes staff that is seeing a bit of this disconnect between these two groups. So that's the surveys. Now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Genevieve, who is going to talk us through a bit of the assessment of the policy landscape that we did and some of the recommendations.
Thank you so much, Fraser. And thank you everyone for having me here to present this, the findings today. So in terms of the policy assessment, to really come up with a robust assessment of the key Industry 4.0 policies and skills policies, we looked at two dimensions. The what, which refers to the scope of policies that Cambodian government is pursuing today. So looking, and we also then looked at the how, which is how these policies have been implemented, really how smooth they have been, how smooth the enforcement processes have been to really achieve the outlined goals of the policies. Next slide. And in terms of the what, we noticed that the Cambodian government has really been prolific in pursuing many different skills and TVET policies that could help to boost Cambodians' readiness for Industry 4.0, but that could also be further areas that further policy areas that could be considered by the government. We looked at 3 different action agendas, and the first action agenda is really policies that focus on stimulating Industry 4.0 adoption across companies and also helping workers to reskill to be really prepared for the new technologies that their employers would adopt. And in terms of this agenda, we found that there's a range of policies that are already helping to enhance overall preparedness for Industry 4.0. So this includes the 2017 to 2025 TVET policy by the government that really tries to enhance the image of vocational training and to provide career guidance. It also includes the Skills Development Fund and sector skills councils that help to forge industry and government partnerships to really identify some of the key skill gaps and also to plan training. However, at the same time, there's also great scope to really consider further policy areas in enhancing R&D investment, particularly given the fact that Cambodian enterprises still demonstrate relatively lower rates of investment as compared to their ASEAN peers. There is also scope to really pursue industry research partnerships and to look at how jobs can also be mapped to the specific skills that are required to undertake those jobs, particularly with Industry 4.0 happening. The next action agenda is really around creating flexible qualification pathways. And this is very crucial for Cambodia, given the lower rates of education, formal education attainment across graduates. And to this effect, this is something that the government has, of course, recognized. And there's a range of policies like competency-based qualifications, which aims to help high school dropouts attain skill certificates. And there's also a range of programs such as student apprenticeship schemes that are required as part of TVET curriculums to help students really get up to speed or youth get up to speed the skills that they require for jobs of the future. However, at the same time, we do think that there's further areas that, that policy measures could go, including the development of lifelong learning frameworks and also measures to really improve the quality of TVET programs to really match the skills that industry require. The third action area is around building inclusiveness to extend the benefits of Industry 4.0 to all workers. And here we find that there's actually quite some focus on helping marginalized communities like low-income youths and also other disadvantaged communities like women to really attain TVET scholarships and help them become more employable. And there's also a significant amount of focus on training programs and employability programs for low-income communities. At the same time, we do think that there's scope for more targeted programs, particularly skills bridging courses for underserved communities, and also particularly with Industry 4.0 becoming more and more prominent, there is further scope to consider social protection measures to cater to the rising class of gig economy workers that currently don't have such measures at the moment. Next slide. And we also looked at the how, which is around how these policies have actually been implemented. And we considered three key dimensions in our assessment. The first relates to how clear and how robust our Industry 4.0 plans are at the moment. And in Cambodia, we actually found that the national I4.0 vision has actually been very clearly articulated through its trade integration strategy. And there is really robust consideration of the kinds of I4.0 trends that need to be considered when thinking about what kind of technology adoption policies make sense. However, we do think that there is room for improvement when it comes to really integrating these tech adoption policies with skills development policies. And this is a kind of an observation that we saw throughout the ASEAN countries that we studied, really having this piece that coordinates between tech and skills. The second dimension is around the strengths of coordination between government agencies and industry partners, and also academia. We found that as part of this trade integration strategy that has really set out a good starting point for this single national roadmap for I4.0. There is further scope for greater coordination to take place between these different parties, the government, industry, and academia, and also to align particularly on the training and educational curriculums across these different parties. The third dimension refers to the alignment of financing and incentives, because it is really important that both employers and the training sector get the incentives or are incentivized to really help workers get the skills that they need. And here, while we did observe that there has been significantly increasing public investment in the national education system, there could still be further funding for particularly for R&D in science and technology development, and also more incentives, especially for employers to train in-service workers. We noted, for example, that less than a fifth of Cambodian employers currently train their workers at the moment, and most of the training initiatives at the industry level happens in industry associations rather than in the workplace. Next slide. So really, what are some of the key policy priorities that Cambodia can consider going forward? To do this, we looked at 5 key challenges. That's really a summary across all the different aspects of the study that we undertook. And these challenges include, as Fraser has mentioned, a limited understanding of I 4.0 technologies by industry, large shifts in tasks and skills because of Industry 4.0, a lack of integrated I 4.0 adoption and skills policies, as I explained earlier, a lack of incentives for worker training, and also limited quality certification processes for courses which the training sector feel that they could benefit from in Cambodia. And then we looked at a range of different policy recommendations that could help to achieve, to really try to address these key challenges. Next slide, please. And there's a series of recommendations, 5 key recommendations, actually from a longer list of policies that we looked at for Cambodia. And the first of this is really looking at I 4.0 adoption roadmaps at the sector level that don't only focus on the different kinds of technologies that firms can adopt, but also really show the linkages between those technologies and the kind of skills that workers will need to pursue, and the kinds of training programs that workers will need to undergo to achieve, to really get these skills. And one positive example is Singapore's industry transformation roadmaps that have really charted this adoption. It's really good to hear as well earlier that the British Embassy is also looking at something similar for Cambodia. The second recommendation is around developing a series of industry-led to vet programs for I 4.0 skills. And we've observed this in a series of civil society organizations across the world. So for example, McKinsey's Generation Program runs industry-focused boot camps to train workers, both youth as well as mid-career workers, in technological skills and other skills that will become more and more important. The third recommendation is around an incentive scheme for firms to train employees for Industry 4.0. And the Singapore government has a great example of this, of how they subsidize employee training course fees and also absentee payroll costs because workers are not able to work while they're training. And these subsidies are actually higher for courses that really relate to the overall I 4.0 roadmap. So there's really a strong incentive for employers to look at them. The fourth recommendation is around upgrading training delivery through I 4.0 technology. So it's not just about teaching I 4.0 skills, but really about integrating them as part of the training process as well. And the final recommendation that I'd like to share here is around strengthening quality assurance mechanisms. And we observe a range of ways in which countries have done this across the globe. For example, requiring training institutes to show evidence of the need for their training programs, such as surveys that they dispatch to employers of, and also agreements that these training institutes that with employers to provide traineeship places for them. So there's a range of examples here that Cambodia can also consider in implementing these mechanisms. And I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. Happy to hear any questions, comments that you may have later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jen and Fraser, for excellent presentation, very comprehensive and very clear. This reinforces His Excellency Pan Pala's earlier remarks. I know there are some questions there, but we are also lagging behind a little bit. In the interest of flow and time, I suggest that we move on to the next phase of panel discussion, and then we have some time for Q&A, so that we try to get responses to the extent possible recognizing the time constraint we noticed already. So with that, I would like to request Santi Jagannathan, Principal Education Specialist at ADB, who also co-led this study from the ADB side, to discuss with the panelists. Santi, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you and welcome to everyone to this panel discussion. It's a great pleasure to hear the perspectives from the Cambodia side. Thank you, Fraser and Genevieve, for the excellent presentation and for the good work on the study. The full report of Cambodia, as well as the other country reports, are all available online, and I encourage participants to go through the full report, since the presentation could only cover some part of it, not the entire report. Now we have a very distinguished panel of senior government representatives to provide their feedback and insights. His Excellency Phan Phala has provided guidance to the study from the very beginning, and I'd like to acknowledge his support, and we are very grateful for that. I request panelists to keep their first response to not more than 5 minutes so that everyone can be heard. And then there's also a session for Q&A where you could provide follow-up points and responses to any questions as well. So let me start with Mr. Kok Hong Chiu, Deputy Director General of Policy in the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Mr. Chiu, the study is showing that adoption of 4IR technologies can increase efficiency and productivity. Application of these technologies can improve Cambodia's global competitiveness in specific sectors. Could you share with us what you would consider to be the priority sectors for the MEF in terms of the industry transformation maps, and how you see the alternative or new financing modalities that can support skills development for 4IR? For example, we know that Skills Development Fund is being piloted under your Directorate General in the MEF, and can you also share thoughts on how that can be harnessed to strengthen skills for 4IR? Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shanti, for having the question. For the sake of time, I'd like to answer straight to your question. So I would like to divide my answer into two parts. The first part of your question is about the MEF view on the priority sector for industry transformation. And my second part of my answer is about financing priority and the modality. So let me start with the first part of my answer is from an MEF perspective. So, but first of all, I would like to thank to the team, Alpha Bar Beta, for the research. So your research is very well structured and taking into account a very comprehensive aspects of the skill development ecosystem builder, and also the scheme you have suggested. So it's very relevant because I'm also a manager of skill development fund. Here we have testing some of the mechanism for the last 5 years, so we would be able to answer some of the question too. So let me start again with the priority sector. So I would like to answer this into two aspects. So how we look at this. The first is about what is the current industry that create jobs, and the near-term future industry that is coming. I mean the emerging sector. The second is what is our policy priority to push some of the sector. So in terms of the current industry, of course, if we, from an MEF perspective, job creation to the current market, the labor market is very important. And of course, government has been the top priority, but also there are also an emerging industry that's coming in. like assembly, manufacturing, automobile, electrical, and some of the wiring. Some of these are quite higher value added. We've seen export growing at a very high rate, and they even expand faster during the COVID pandemic in 2020. So we know that in the near term and medium term future, the government has to somehow to accommodate with all of the regional shift in relocation of the industry in order to maintain jobs. So of course, in the short and medium term, this emerging industry will still rely on low wage, low skill and low wage labor. And of course, to keep this industry and to boost it at maximum, we think that it's very important to upgrade the existing workforce as well, the skill of the workforce. But of course, in the medium term to long term, when the wage increase, this industry like electrical, electronics, manufacturing, assembly, and some of the other like industry that moving into Cambodia will eventually transform and will be use some of the what we call a IO4 automation and some of the IoT. So this is something we should be prepared for. So in terms of the policy driven, we also see some of the sector that is becoming more important for driving domestic jobs in domestic production and also reaping the benefit of the regional what we call a free trade agreement. So we've seen, of course, a policy driven sector would be agro processing, food packaging, and some of our other supporting industry from the SME. So these also quite challenging because they're quite a medium and quite local, and the nature is quite local. So it's important for us to move aggressively with this sector in order to capture some of the free trade agreement in the region, particularly with the free trade agreement with China. And also we can create a local market for agriculture. And we've seen the adoption of the modern technology in agriculture sector as well. So this area, you know, integrated with the IO4, ICT sector, and of course, the digital economy policy framework will soon be formulated and implemented. So we think that these are all the sectors going to become very important. So let me come to my second part on financing and modality. So of course, upgrading the skill of the existing workforce is very important for us to finance. So, but not just the targets, but also the programs and the delivery model that we should consider, because through our experience in the past, you know, there is something that the challenge has not been solved or slightly solved. So let me share you my experience with the Skill Development Fund at the MEF. So the fund is actually at the beginning of the establishment. We also did research that is important for the fund to work with private sector. And of course, we learned that in Cambodia, because due to weak industry at early stage, we tend to be flexible, meaning we tend to give more incentive to private sector, to attract private sector to work with us. So in terms of the cost sharing, we adopt a flexible attitude from 25 to 50% of cost sharing. But after 2 years of testing experience, what we realize is that for a very large firm, of course, when their scale is big enough, they will go ahead and invest in skill. For medium firms, because their skill is low, and because of the labor market failure, we are lack of skilled labor. So industry, medium enterprise, they poach each other. So it's very difficult for them to invest in training. So now we are moving from testing with, it's been 2 years now. We will test more with for demand-driven model with large firm. So in terms of the modality of financing, so the cost sharing. So of course, I agree with some of the findings that incentive schemes, even in Singapore, the government is designing an incentive scheme for private sector to train. So I think this is a very right direction. But for Cambodia context, how we would finance. So of course, in the medium term, we would expect medium and long term, we would expect automation and IoT in the context of industry transformation will happen. So like your findings that enterprise, they do not have a clear roadmap and they do not target and focus even institutions. So in this area, if they focus on investing, considering investing, this is an area that the government or DP can consider financing. But how are we going to finance? So we have experienced in the past that it is very difficult for managing the project. So for training project, it is it's something very I mean, like, because during the early stage when the government have a little experience of how running the training project, and the private sector are still in the infant stage of how they cost share with the government. Often there is procedures, often there is financing, arrangement that make it a procedure that makes it very difficult to implement. But we also see a potential collaboration model between a private sector and the government. So in the medium and to long term, cost sharing on training project may be difficult to implement due to many reasons, procedures, and the implementation agency may have not there. It takes time, but there is a window of opportunity for the modality to work. Is that the government can finance infrastructure and own it. This is somewhere the government can invest, and then allow the private sector to manage and invest in the training. So this is what we are considering to test again, because we have seen an increase in the interest of the industry to work with the government, but they want to spearhead and manage on the one hand, but on the other hand, they don't have infrastructure, equipment, and guidelines. So there is a lot of area we can test further. So this is for the existing workforce target. For the programs, because I think for the program delivery, I think it is very important that we have to be contextual, meaning because Cambodians have a high, what we call high dropout rates, like more than 70% they drop out before grade 9 at the age of 15. They go directly to the labor market, and once they go to the labor market, they don't come back and take TVETs. So I think one of the priority areas is for us to invest at grade 8 and grade 9 in terms of basic industry knowledge, in terms of basic IO4. So when I talk about basic, it's not something that is need big investment. We just need a new curriculum that allow the young and new labor force to understand the discipline and the like the working hour, the industry change and the automation, and how to read the message and how to use digital device. Very basic communication. So this is something that would would require less budget, but would further improve the capability and understanding of industry 4.0. And
thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we park your subsequent points to the Q&A session, and
okay.
So that we can also hear the other panelists? Thank you so much. You covered a lot of ground. Thank you very much for all the very important insights you gave. I'd like to now turn to Dr. Ken Liu, Secretary General of the Garment Manufacturers Association of Cambodia. You know, garments sector was covered in the study. Dr. Liu, you know, the study shows that the garment industry may lose up to 12% of jobs. They could be displacement due to 4IR by 2030, but it's showing a potential for job increase of about 51% arising from productivity and application of new technologies. So could you share with us what are the main barriers for adoption of 4IR technologies in the garment industry? And how can your association support in terms of investing in technology and skills development, particularly to protect the workers, you know, including women, from job displacement, and also access the new jobs that are likely to be generated? Dr. Liu, your floor is yours. Dr. Liu, can we have your intervention?
Shanti, Dr. Liu facing a problem joining.
Okay, okay. So maybe we can then move to Ms. Pichmalika Jim. She's Deputy Director General in the Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training. Mr. Jim, 4IR is expected to influence all areas and aspects of the workforce. You heard that. On the one hand, digitalization is gathering pace, and on the other hand, you have new developments like the gig economy, where workers are increasingly freelancers and working remotely with short-term contracts with several employers. These things are gathering pace. The study is showing a big difference in the perception of training institutions in the readiness of their graduates to work compared to employers. While 59% of training institutions think that their graduates are ready for entry-level jobs, only 10% of employers in the garment sector and 21% of employers in the tourism sector agree with this. So, you know, the employers don't think the graduates are so ready for entry-level positions. So can you share with us, you know, how can we facilitate a smoother transition from study to work, and how can skills development and training be more market-oriented and create more ready workforces for the 4IR jobs? Ms. Jim, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Santi, and very good morning, Excellency Chair of the meeting, and representative from ADB, and Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the research team that have very great and excellent presentation, which very comprehensive and very structured. And also I have interested in the 5 key recommendation that's quite relevant and valid for us to as the future direction for the skill development that I can say motivate for all. So in order to facilitate the transition to for industry revolution, from the MRBT view, the 3 levels of the intervention should be take into account. Firstly, we are talking about the system. Secondly is the process, and the thirdly is the institutional capacity, or we can say that the strengthening of the institution. This is to meet the short-term, middle-term, and long-term sustainability. What we mean by that? Accelerating the online learning platform is indeed, along with the application of the flipped classroom and introducing our andragogy approach. This approach can shift from the traditional teaching as well as the traditional learning, which means that we focus on the project-based learning atmosphere, that the student can take this classroom as their project-based discussion, and that is the participatory with the result of this classroom and the result-based discussion. So this is allow the student as well as the teacher requires to do a lot of research and to have a proper schedule. The also quality out in the format of the open learning modality is also one of the significant factor that we are on the process of reforming and reskilling and upskilling of the course that have a participation from the private partnership engagement. This is that His Excellency Pan Palas, the one that have a strong support from MES, and he's present in the opening of the academic study for this program as well. So this is ongoing reforming, and this to allows our student or our graduate with the skill that ready for the entry to the job market. The other thing is to promote the awareness raising on the 4th Industrial Revolution by key business and capacity building of the basic and the introducing to the Internet of Things is very important as well. Furthermore, upgrade training through the 4th Industrial Revolution technology by providing the capacity building to the basic digital skill and their application. This is very significant for the building the capacity of our human resource. This is already expressed the remark by His Excellency Pan Palas as well, and to engage the private partnership participation, TVET need to develop the incentive scheme for the firm to train the employee for the 4th Industrial Revolution. This is to shift from the traditional way to the automation transformation. In the term of the capacity for the training institution, shifting from the function-based to the process-based management is the crucial important. We can start from the national level. Is one of the process that management need to be reformed. On the other hand, expanding the TVET path is equally important as well, because this is to share and mobilize the existing resource, both human and material resource. This is we need to use the existing resources that through our training institution. Last but not least, develop a TVET master plan for physical infrastructure for all 38 public training institutions and strengthening teacher capacity through the digital skill and innovation. In this regard, we also have under our training institution, we have developed and the what we call R&D training center. One already in place in the National Polytechnic Institute of Cambodia one, and we extend to have through our public training institution. So for the how TVET institution can gain more experience with for industrial revolution. In order to do that, the individual or collectively of the training institution should start exploring to the digital tool to see the advantage and disadvantage that allow to choose the right digital tool. Then the training to take the advantage on new technology supposed to be provided. This is to create a sense of love for continuous learning through STEM agenda, which can help students to develop their skill and creativity, inspiring young learner to engage with the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and arts. Last but not least, to start the develop and implement a digital transformation strategy, which the same is to fail, to plan, and then your planning to fail. That is the thing that we need to take into account in order to go along with the development of the skill roadmap in the future. I think that's all from my part, and thank you very much for giving me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think your points were very, very interesting. I mean, the points about STEM and digital transformation, it takes us to the next point that we could hear from Dr. Ankirod Sam Orr, Deputy Director General in Policy and Planning in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport. Dr. R, I think we are looking at a future where the curriculum and learning objectives will need to be amended in the context of the skills for 4IR. Could you share with us how you see strengthening secondary level school education for STEM fields, learning to learn, and skills for industry 4IR? And also, how can industry also work hand in hand with school education, higher education, and polytech institutes like ITC. Over to you, Dr. R. Request you to please keep your intervention to 5 minutes so that we can also hear others. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. R.
Okay, thank you so much for your question, and thanks so much to the finding presented by the researcher team of ADB. I would like to let you know about what the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport has done in terms of reinforcing the quality of education in secondary education and in higher education to respond to IO 4.0 and to respond also to our IDP policy. It's mean that industrial development policy 2015-2025 of our government. In terms of the quality in general education, we can say about the promotion of general education for at least 9 years by reducing dropout rate to the maximum level at the primary education level and promoting enrollment at the secondary level. It's mean that we catch up our youth to equip them all competency related to the labor market and other competency like a soft skill or hard skill. I would like to say that related to the skill and human resource development. Second, the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport set up a program to give a second opportunity for students to finish secondary education by establishing testing based equivalent education that we call a BIP. So this program BIP can allow our students who drop the school to come back to get some competency in terms of general education, which allow students to receive a general education certificate from the non-formal that we call non-formal education. We have also strengthened the quality of education at the primary and secondary level by focusing on strengthening basic knowledge for children and youth in mathematics, science, literature, and technology. And we have also strengthened the understanding regarding selection of profession and the relevant technical skill in as much as reinforcing the continuing education program for skill development in correlation with existing vocational training. It means that we provide the opportunity to our students in terms of technical skill, so that they can after school, it means that after secondary school, if they don't want to go to the higher education, they can go directly to labor market. We have also improved our curriculum by integrating soft skill, including social communication skill in problem solving, respect of working discipline, and other essential skill needed to build the base of industrial development. In this point, I would like to let you know that actually we introduce also another competency, another skill for our student in secondary school. It's that we call income generation skill. But during the COVID period, it's difficult for us to implement this new skill for our students. And we hope that after the COVID, we can fully integrate this new competency for our students in secondary school. We have also strengthened technical training in response to a private sector demand, including soft skills through cooperation with targeted foreign investor, with the aim of establishing a skill training center with, for example, our development partner like Japan, Korean, Chinese, Singapore, France, Canada, etc. We promote also trilateral training, government training, institution, company, factory, in order to equip them with skill and productivity training by way of integrating them into the existing education and vocational training program through the public industry association cooperation. We expand also on science, technical and vocational training by focusing on factory workers, so that they could receive it means that we work also with workers. We provide them some training in mathematics, in literacy, so that they can read and they can calculate correctly in terms of to facilitate their life, something like that. We strengthen also education at the university with curriculum related to agriculture, science, and other important science and engineering by upgrading laboratory equipment in order to enhance education quality for research and development. I would like to inform you also that in terms of STEM education, we expand our program year by year. We have a new generation school. We have E2 STEM. We have other program in the secondary school that we can provide the STEM education to our students. We have trained also our teachers to provide the competency in terms of STEM education to our students in secondary education and in higher education also. And we train our teacher to understand well about the linkage between what they have to teach in the school and what the need of the industrial of the labor market, in order so that they can approach their what they teach in the school with the competency needed in the labor market. Right now, we try to promote the adaptive learning system that can respond to the potential need of our students. It means that we don't focus just only on one method, but on many methodology to give the competency to equip our students with the competency needed in the labor market. So in terms of what we can say about work hand in hand with higher education and polytechnic institute like Institute of Technology of Cambodia. We can say that we open for all partners in terms of the training, in terms of industry, that they can work with us, that they can train our students to meet the labor market need. So I think what we have done so far is the response to the industry revolution 4.0, because right now we have roadmap for secondary education 2030. We have higher education policy 2030 that state all what we have to do to prepare our youth to respond to the labor market need. So what I wanted to, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think the readiness that you will create in the school system would be a very good foundation for the future. I would like to now turn to the last panelist, His Excellency Seng Yung-Hul, Director General of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. We'd really like to hear your views on, the disruptive technologies are a big game changer. Could you share with us the ministry's plans and actions of how to strengthen the innovative capacities in the country and investments in science, technology, and innovation to accelerate the transition to 4IR, and particularly investments in human capital development and skills? Over to you, His Excellency Seng Yung-Hul.
Yeah, thank you, Shanti. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
very well,
please
please.
go ahead.
Okay, good. Yes, apology. I will switch to talk Khmer. In most of us are Cambodian, and it's better for me to outreach what we are doing to our fellow Cambodian on science, technology, and innovation. Thanks for the invitation. I will try to scope my talk within 5 minutes. បាទអរគុណច្រើនសូមជំរាបសួរឲ្យដល់លោកទីលោកលោកស្រីដែលមានវត្តមានសម្រាប់ខ្ញុំសូមចែកចម្លែកនៅកន្លែងនេះថាការសិក្សាស្រាវជ្រាវពី Reaping Industry 4.0 នេះយើងត្រូវយល់ទាំងអស់គ្នាថាផ្ដោតទៅលើ2 sector ទេគឺ Garment ហើយនិង Industry tourism អញ្ចឹង scope 2នេះខ្ញុំគិតថាក្នុងរយៈកុំឲ្យមានការច្រឡំទៅសាធារណជនថាវាទាំងអស់តែ2 sector នេះទេដែលយើងត្រូវចាំទាំងអស់គ្នាហើយ Garment sector more or less មិនអាចឲ្យយើង graduate ដល់2050 ambition ទេអញ្ចឹង manufacturing ឬក៏ heavy technology អីផ្សេងៗនៅតែដើរតួជាចម្បងសម្រាប់ប្រទេសយើងដើរក្នុងរយៈពេលឆ្ងាយ2030ការងារអស់នេះពី3 sector នេះកុំឲ្យច្រឡំតែ Industrial Revolution 4.0 for all sector only 2 ហ្នឹងជា report ដែលយើងត្រូវចាំបងប្អូនគ្នាហើយងាកមកការងារដែលក្រសួងឧស្សាហកម្មវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិងវិនិយោគជាពិសេសគណៈយុគឋានវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិងវិនិយោគគណៈយុគឋានរបស់យើងក៏ទទួលបន្ទុកជាអគ្គលេខាធិការឋានក្រមប្រឹក្សាជាតិវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិងវិនិយោគដែលមានរដ្ឋមន្ត្រី8រូបក៏ដូចជារដ្ឋលេខាធិការពីក្រសួងពាក់ព័ន្ធហើយសម្ដេចជាប្រធានកិត្តិយសនៅក្នុងហ្នឹងនឹងប្រជុំឆាប់នេះហើយខ្ញុំសូមរំលឹកចែករំលែកដល់លោកទីលោកស្រីទាំងអស់គ្នាថាយើងបានធ្វើ road map ហើយខ្ញុំ fancy មែនទេអធិស្ឋានសូមលាយពាក្យអង់គ្លេសខ្លះ fancy មែនទេ everything road map everything ប៉ុន្តែ what is synergy of all the thing together is not ដូចជាមិនទាន់ទេយើងត្រូវមើលអញ្ចឹងត្រូវ co-create all of these activity make sure that អ្វីដែលយើងត្រូវធ្វើហ្នឹងវាប្រស៊ីគ្នាទៅវិញទៅមកក្រសួងឧស្សាហកម្មវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិងវត្តបានធ្វើ road map ដែរតើតមវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិងវត្តប៉ុន្តែវាជា macro scale ដែលហើយក្នុងហើយបាន interview សិត senior level របស់គណៈនាយកដ្ឋានពាក់ព័ន្ធទាំងអស់ហើយ file road map ហ្នឹងយើងផ្ដោតទៅលើ5ដែល5នេះយើងឃើញមាន governance education O&D networking ហើយនិង ecosystem ទៅលើ trade policy អញ្ចឹងងាកមកសំណួររបស់ Shanti វិញថាតើយើង strengthening technology ឬក៏ human capital របៀបម៉េចខ្ញុំគិតថា 5 pillar របស់ road map នេះមួយក្នុងចំណោម5គឺ education នេះយើងបាន list line ministry ដែលធ្វើការនៅក្នុងច្រើនហើយឧទាហរណ៍ដូចជាក្រសួងអប់រំដូចជាក្រសួង TVET បាទក្រសួងខាងដែលលោកស្រីខាង TVET បានមានប្រសាសន៍ហើយអញ្ចឹង road map របស់យើងនេះបានដាក់បញ្ជាក់ច្បាស់ថាឧទាហរណ៍ដូចជា2030ត្រូវមាន 50% នៃសិស្សត្រូវ enroll នៅក្នុង STEM បើចង់ឲ្យបានដល់ទស្សនវិស័យ2030 50% នៃសិស្សដែល enroll ក្នុង higher education ត្រូវតែជា STEM major អញ្ចឹងអានេះជារឿងដែលត្រូវធ្វើទាំងអស់គ្នាទាំងក្រសួងការងារបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលជាជីវៈក៏ដូចជាក្រសួងអប់រំហើយក្រសួងឧស្សាហកម្មវិទ្យាសាស្ត្រជាវិវត្តត្រូវធ្វើការជាមួយគ្នារឿងហ្នឹងដើម្បីធ្វើម៉េចឲ្យដល់អា2030ហ្នឹង 50% ហ្នឹង specifically នៅលើ road map ដែលបញ្ជាក់ច្បាស់ប៉ុន្តែ road map របស់ក្រសួងអប់រំយើងមាន higher education road map ឥឡូវ TVET ក៏ត្រៀមធ្វើ skill road map អីផ្សេងតើអស់នេះត្រូវបាច់ចូលគ្នាបានច្បាស់លាស់ដើម្បីឲ្យការងាររបស់យើងហ្នឹងប្រស៊ីគ្នាកុំឲ្យ partner របស់យើងទាញទៅទិសផ្សេងគ្នាចុងក្រោយយើងក៏មិនដឹងទៅដល់ណាអញ្ចឹងការវិតម្លៃរួមនេះត្រូវតែមានខ្ញុំនឹងលើកការងារអស់នេះនៅក្នុងប្រជុំក្រុមប្រឹក្សាជាតិក្នុងពេលឆាប់នេះបាទហើយទី2 យើងដើម្បីប្រទេសយើងរីកចម្រើនក្នុងរយៈពេលយូរ garment sector វាគ្រាន់តែជា sector មួយដែល low labor skill ទេទោះបីយើង high labor skill ណាព្រោះគ្មានទៅ high labor skill លើផ្នែក garment អីប្រហែលដែរយើងត្រូវមើលទៅលើផ្នែក manufacturing local industry investment អីផ្សេង FDI ផ្សេងដែលមកស្រុកយើងដែលវាជា technology base ដើម្បីឲ្យយើងនឹងផលិតជា product ហើយ trading policy គឺជារឿងធំដែលយើងត្រូវមើលទៅថ្ងៃមុខនៅពេលដែល industrial revolution នេះវា grow ឡើងមក technology អីផ្សេង human resource របស់យើងវា ready អញ្ចឹងបាន 50% ដែលខ្ញុំនិយាយពីលើហ្នឹងត្រូវតែត្រៀមទី3ក្រសួងឧស្សាហកម្មវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យាវិនិវត្តបានមានការព្រមព្រៀងពីរដ្ឋាភិបាលក៏បានផ្ញើទៅហើយគេក៏បានផ្ញើលិខិតឆ្លើយវិញដែរក្នុងឆ្នាំហ្នឹងយើងនឹង finalize research agenda national research agenda តែម្ដងអញ្ចឹង national research agenda នេះត្រូវតែ serve national interest and security របស់ប្រទេសផងអញ្ចឹង road map របស់វិស័យផ្សេងក៏ត្រូវតែ align ជាមួយ national research agenda ដែលយើងត្រូវត្រៀមនេះដែរប៉ុន្តែ UN escape ដែលយើងធ្វើការជាមួយគេនឹងធ្វើ survey interview អីជាមួយក្រសួងពាក់ព័ន្ធសំខាន់ជាមួយ top management level ដើម្បីឲ្យបានពិតជា priority sector ឬក៏ champion sector របស់យើងច្បាស់លាស់រហូតដល់ឥឡូវយើងបានឃើញមានក្រុមស្ថាប័នផ្សេងឧទាហរណ៍ដូចជាស្ថាប័ននៅវិស័យអប់រំក៏ដោយនៅ MES ក៏ដោយនៅក្រសួងបណ្ដុំបណ្ដាលជីវៈអីក៏ដោយក៏យើងមានឃើញជា identify sector ផ្សេងប៉ុន្តែជា nation wide ដែលឆ្លងកាត់ការសិក្សាឲ្យច្បាស់លាស់លើផ្នែកនេះមិនទាន់មានឡើយទេអញ្ចឹង national research agenda នឹងដាក់ចូលឲ្យក្រុមប្រឹក្សាជាតិអនុម័តក្នុងប្រមាណខែនេះទៀតហើយយើងនឹងចាប់ផ្ដើម develop ចេញ national research agenda នៅក្នុងហ្នឹងហើយ6 technology roadmap ទៀតដែលក្រសួងឧស្សាហកម្មវិទ្យាសាស្ត្របច្ចេកវិទ្យានិវេសនឹងចាប់ផ្ដើមធ្វើនៅក្នុងឆ្នាំហ្នឹង3ហើយនិងឆ្នាំក្រោយ3ទៀតដោយមានការគ្រប់គ្រងពី partner ឧទាហរណ៍ដូចជា step 2របស់កូរ៉េអីជាដើម Go Spin project ដែលយើងកំពុងចាប់ផ្ដើមធ្វើ UNESCO approve ហើយធ្វើទៅលើ inventory លើ technology ទៅលើ STI position inventory របស់ខ្មែរយើងទាំងមូលនឹងចេញនេះជា baseline data មួយឲ្យខ្មែរយើងទៅឈានទៅមុខទៀតថាតើយើង reap industrial revolution 4.0 overall ជាង two sector ដែល ADB បានធ្វើនេះយ៉ាងម៉េចទៀតបាទអញ្ចឹងជាសន្និដ្ឋានរួមរបស់ខ្ញុំដោយសារខ្ញុំដូចជា consume មកពេលសំដែរហើយអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំគិតថាយើង government ទាំងអស់ stakeholder ត្រូវតែធ្វើការជុំគ្នាបានច្រើនជាងមុនទៀតជា co-creation process មួយដែលធ្វើឲ្យយើងចាប់យកឱកាសឲ្យបានច្បាស់លាស់ពីព្រោះcreative destruction នេះវាមាន pro and con នៅជាមួយគ្នារហូតតើយើងដឹងថាតើយើងចាប់របៀបម៉េចសម្រាប់រយៈពេល10ឆ្នាំរយៈពេល2050ចាប់យកយ៉ាងម៉េចអានេះគឺត្រូវការយើងទៅជែកគ្នាបានទូលំទូលាយក្នុងចំណោម government ដែលពាក់ព័ន្ធធំដូចជាវិស័យក្រសួងអប់រំតាក់ទង human capital ក្រសួងការងារបណ្ដុំបណ្ដាលជីវៈតាក់ទងនឹងការអប់រំតាក់ទងនឹង skill development អីជាដើមបាទអរគុណសូមបញ្ចប់
Thank you very much. I think we've had very interesting presentations and perspectives from different ministries. Unfortunately, we are way behind time on this agenda. So I would like to turn this back to Brajesh for the rest of the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shanti. We have had a very active discussions on this very important topic. As you mentioned, we are really running out of time, but we recognize the questions from our audience. Some have been already answered, but we will look at the questions and then get back to those who have asked the questions with the responses. So we want to assure you that we'll also share some of the documents with you. There was a lot of demand for that. So with that, I would like to now move on to the final part of our program. So sorry for this adjustment. I'd like to request Ms. Ayako Inagaki who is the Director of Human and Social Development Division in our Southeast Asia Regional Department. So Ayako, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Brajesh, and indeed it has been, the topic is so important and it's so crucial that obviously, one webinar is not going to be enough, but I think it has been a really rich discussions. In any case, Your Excellency, Dr. Pan Pala, Secretary of State, Minister of Economy and Finance, thank you very much for your leadership throughout this exercise. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, and my ADB colleagues, on behalf of the Asian Development Bank, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the panelists, to the presenter, and all the participants in the seminar. I understand that we had more than 480 participants, from officials from the concerned ministries, the academia, researchers, the industry representative, the education and training institutions, as well as the development partners. So the study presented by Dr. Fraser Thompson and the panel discussion that we went through provided us with very useful policy analysis, research, and a survey of employers and training institutions on the readiness of IL 4.0 in Cambodia. And I was quite impressed by, through the panel discussion, the range of initiatives that each of the ministries already taken to take Cambodia on the smooth roadmap toward transforming its economy, industry, and the skills asset for Industry 4.0. So building of this study recommendation, and now, I'm moving from the discussion part to now the action part, which our government's counterparts led by MEF are already taking. So the Royal Government of Cambodia and ADB, we are working together to develop this long-term skills development roadmap, which includes at least 2 of these industry transformation maps. We agree to develop 1 industry transformation map for textile and apparel industry, and we'll be further in discussing with MEF on what could be the second priority sectors that the government would like to develop this industry transformation map. I recall that there are obviously short-term to medium-term priority in terms of the sectors, but we also understand that there's a medium-term and longer-term that as MEF in terms of policy would like to develop certain sectors, particularly as an emphasis also on how you develop the local industries. So I found it's crucial that the Minister of Economy and Finance, on behalf of the government, we keep on leading this process of skills development, roadmap, and ITM, so that it does, at the end of the day, align all the resources that's being brought out by the other ministries and industries all together to align to this industry roadmap. So this ITM, the roadmap, and the industry transformation map will be developed in consultation with all stakeholders to reflect views and prospects on how Cambodia can diversify further its economy and move up its global value chains to stay competitive in the global market in the next decade. And obviously, as we heard from MEF, it's also very important to develop the local market, the local economy here. And ADB is committed to support the government leadership to develop this roadmap and ITM to address the skills gap and skills shortage. harness the potential of IR 4.0 to increase productivity, to facilitate the skills development, and also to give good incentive for the industries. As you remember, last year in September, ADB and Skill Future Singapore organized a webinar for Cambodia to learn lessons from Singapore on how they develop 23 ITMs and the corresponding skills framework. And I see many of you attended this webinar. And ADB has been also conducting a series of workshops on IR 4.0 readiness assessment and strategy development to develop capacity of our clients, including Cambodia. So we will keep on doing that, sharing knowledge and also getting knowledge also for the rich experience from our Cambodia government counterpart as well as industry partners, so that at the end of the day, we have a sound skills development roadmap and the ITMs. So guided by this roadmap and ITMs, ADB will also work with the government to formulate a new project, Skills for Future Economy, to support implementation of this roadmap to equip the workforce with market relevant skills. As we discussed this, what is really important is obviously a close partnership between government, the education and training institutions, the supply side, and the industries representing the demand side, and we should all be responsible for one objective. So the ADB new project will focus on strengthening qualified public and private training institutions, expanding skills development fund further, enhancing training subsidies in partnership with industry association, and the special economic zones for the ITM implementation. We have mobilized different experts to facilitate the process and discussions among the stakeholders. So we do look forward to a next consultation with you on this roadmap and the ITMs. With this, since there's now the actions are now continuing, again, I would like to thank everyone for this successful webinar, and wishing you a good afternoon, and also let's keep safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ayako, for those comments and our effort to continue this dialogue, important dialogue, as you rightly pointed out. It seems like scratching the surface of such an important topic, and we will continue this discussion. So thank you once again, His Excellency Pan Pala, and all the panelists, presenters, our colleagues who put a lot of effort to make this a success. And we are very glad that we had a good turnout. So thank you very much for the audience and for your excellent questions. Once again, apologies for not having enough time to respond to these queries here, but we will get back to you with our responses. With this, is there anything else, Santi, remaining? I'm just making sure everything is okay now to conclude.
We covered, and unfortunately we did not have time for detailed question and answers, and we could not answer all the questions, but definitely the conversation will continue, and we can, yeah, we've covered the agenda, Rajesh.
Okay, we can conclude now?
Yes.
Okay, with this, we'd like to conclude this webinar. Thank you very much. Look forward to interacting again in the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll try to send you the responses, those we could not answer.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.